What's up, football fans? So today we're going to talk about college football, and I'm going to start right off by quoting the Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pava. College football this week is lit. Yes, it was. So I'm going to start off. Usually I start off this by starting with the top 25, but this time I want to go into last week's game, and then we're going to go into the top 25, and then we're going to go into this week's game. I'm going to do a little something different this week because last week's games were indeed lit. Talk about some upsets. It was an upset day of college football. So I want to start with that upset day of college football. Let's start with week 6. All right, folks. Make sure the screen shared out there. And yes, it is. I'm going to skip those first two games. I'll go back to those later. I want to start off right here with Vanderbilt. Wow. 40-35, beating Alabama. The student section carrying the goalpost out of the stadium all the way downtown to Broadway and dumping it in the river. And Nick Saban, quote, playing across the board for everyone to see, where he says the only place in the SEC that's not hard to play is Vanderbilt, which I'm sure that fired the students up, but it was really a true statement because the second part he said, because you have more fans than them. And even though their fans showed out in terms of carrying the goalposts and all the excitement, Alabama still had more fans than Vanderbilt. But what a game. I mean, Vandy jumped out from the beginning off to a 13-0 lead. Jalen Milroe pick 6. I mean, that had to wake Alabama up. I think Bama came in the game sleepwalking after the Georgia game a little bit. But when you're down 13-0 early, that kind of wakes you up. But at that point, Vandy was playing all downhill because, Alabama was playing all down here because Vandy would not relinquish that lead. Alabama continued to get within a touchdown, and then Vandy would continue to push it back up over a touchdown. And it happened back and forward. It was 13-7 at the end of the first quarter. It was 23-14 at halftime. Every time Alabama scored, Vanderbilt came back and scored. And the Commodores give them props at the end of the game because Alabama put themselves in a situation when they scored late. It looked like, you stop them 3 and out, get the ball back, and Alabama pulls it out. But Vanderbilt said, no, we're going to get the necessary first downs, run the clock out, and get this historic victory. And historic it was for Vanderbilt, as Vanderbilt hadn't beaten a number one team, I think, in the last 60 tries. I believe that's what the statistic was. What a win. Had to start off with that one. That one certainly doesn't damn Alabama from playoff contention. They could probably lose one more game. If they lose 2 more games, they're going to probably not make it unless they just make it because they're Alabama. But everyone's losing, so a 3-loss team may make the playoff. So next we look at Ohio State. They got their big test coming up. We're going to talk about that later on this week. They beat Iowa 35-7. We know Iowa's got a good defensive team and no offense. So for Iowa, sure, the defense probably wore down, giving up 28 in the second half because the offense cannot move or do anything against that Ohio State team. Tennessee, another big upset. Another storming of the field, another goalpost getting carried off, not quite carried off 3 miles, but carried off the field at least. And that was Arkansas pulling a stunner against Tennessee, who looked invincible early in the year. But the Vols, number 4, no more. They dropped that game. They're 4-1 now, 1-1 in the SEC. And Arkansas, 4-2, 2-1 in the SEC. Georgia, number 5, picked up an easy win against Auburn, one of the worst teams in the SEC for my money, probably the second worst. Mississippi State's the worst. But, they actually hung in there for a little while against Georgia. I won't do them that bad. That was a game. That was a 1-score game for a while. But now I'm not all that impressed right now with Carson Beck without his weapons, who left in the NFL, Ladd McConkey, and, of course, Brock Bowers. But Georgia's good enough to keep rolling in number 5, even though they lost last week to Bama. Penn State coming in at number 7. They got a pretty easy win this week against UCLA. They haven't really been tested yet, so we'll see what happens when they get tested. Another big game, the comeback. Cam Ward and the Miami Hurricanes. What a comeback. I mean, Cal led that game 35-10. Put a lot of this on Cal. They got conservative in this game. They were up 35-10. And they didn't continue to be aggressive and do the things that got them ahead 35-10 against Miami. Canes came all the way across the country, put up 21 in the fourth quarter. came back from 35-10 and won 39-38. Cam Ward is something special. That man had 437 yards, a couple touchdowns. He's definitely a Heisman candidate, and he's been a difference maker there. But you wonder, with the Canes surviving the way that they survived the last 2 weeks, will that survival run out? If it doesn't run out, it's going to be because of how great Cam Ward is. But I really got to question how good the team is with, the Virginia Tech game and the Cal game. But Cam Ward showing that he's looking to at least bring the U back for a year. We'll see how things continue to go there. Texas A&M embarrasses previously number 9 Missouri 41-10. I felt like Missouri had the long 75-yard touchdown called back because the lineman was upfield, and it would have been 10-7 at that point. I feel like after that play, Missouri just quit. I think that play just absolutely deflated them going on the road, and the Aggies just completely smashed them. 5-1, 3-0 in the SEC is the Aggies. That one loss coming the first game of the year to Notre Dame. They picked it up. They're playing good ball right now. Number 10, Michigan, another upset with a top 10 team. They lose 27-17 to Washington. Believe I picked this upset. Washington, of course, they were in the championship game last year, and they lost to Michigan. Both teams have changed a lot. Washington coming in the game unranked. Michigan coming in the game ranked number 10, but we know they've lost so much of their players from last year, and the big loss was losing coach Jim Harbaugh. And, of course, they already have a loss this season on their record at home. So they got a good win a couple weeks ago against USC, but a little bit of a revenge for Washington, even though both teams have different coaches and a lot of different players. But for the fans and for the university, it's a chance to get a little payback against the team you just played for the Natty and lost to them in dominant fashion. Come out fourth quarter, outscore Michigan 13-0 to come from behind and get a 10-point victory. Great win for Washington. Both teams 2-1 in the Big Ten. Next game, another upset. Number 11 goes down. USC 3-2 now. They lose to now 3-3 Minnesota. 24-17 Minnesota, 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to come back and pull out. But 24-17 win. PJ Fleck and the guys continue to row the boat. Big win for them. Ole Miss said no upset for us this week. They got upset last week. This week they said no. They dominate South Carolina in South Carolina 27-3. And South Carolina was just smothered by that defense. Ole Miss known for their offense, but their defense looks really good at times. Clemson, another win this week. They've been winning 4 in a row since that Georgia lost the first week when they looked poor in that game. But Dabo is getting it together. 29-13 against the Florida State Seminole team that's been such a disappointment. 1-5 on the season. Could easily have been 0-6 because that Cal game was, this close. Tough season for the Seminoles. 1-5 after an undefeated regular season last year. Iowa State coming in number 16. Easy win over Baylor 43-21. Baylor is 0-3 in the Big 12. 2-4 in the conference. And overall, they're going to probably be looking for a new coach in this offseason. Iowa State 5-0, continuing to roll. We'll see when they play some more competition if they can keep that thing rolling and be a playoff team. Boise State, a big win, 4-1 on the year, 1-0 in the Mountain West. They smack up Utah State 62-31. They scored 35 points in the second quarter, 49 points in the first half. Easy peasy for Boise State as they're number 21, and they hope to march towards being that group of 5 at-large team in the playoff as well. A little semi-upset here. I don't really think it's much of one. I picked SMU. SMU's 5-1, 2-0 in the ACC. They pick up the win on the road against the Louisville Cardinals, 34-27. Louisville came in number 22. They're now 3-2. Obviously, they're going to drop out of the poll, and when we get to the poll in a minute, I expect to see SMU in the poll. So now we're looking at Indiana. They keep it rolling, 41-24, 6-0 on the season, already bowl eligible, 3-0 in the Big Ten. They beat Northwestern. I would love to see Indiana keep rolling. That's a different team. We haven't seen much from them. Love to see it, but their schedule is going to stiffen up a lot, so we'll see if they can continue to keep it rolling. I'll go back up to the top. Friday night football, we had Michigan State lose to number 6 Oregon 31-20. Oregon's 5-0 in the year. They're going to be tested. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Syracuse win in overtime against UNLV, who was ranked number 25, 44-41 in a wild game. Syracuse, they're 4-1 on the year. They may be moving into the poll too. Like I said, we'll find it out in a minute. UNLV surely will be dropping out if they drop to 4-1. All right, so now I'm going to pull up the top 25 poll, the coaches in the AP poll. Over the Texas Longhorns to be expected as the number one team in the AP poll. I think it was with Bama, and we know Bama lost. Texas, they got a big matchup. We're going to talk about the matchups in a few minutes. Ohio State, I mentioned, and Oregon, they both have big matchups. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Ohio State 2 in both polls, Oregon 3 in both polls. Penn State's number 4 in the AP and number 5 in the coaches poll at 5-0. Georgia's coming in at number 5 in the AP poll and number 4 in the coaches poll with that one loss to Bama. Number 6 in both polls are the Miami Hurricanes. They great comeback win this week. We'll see if they can keep it going, but they've survived the last 2 weeks, so we'll see. Alabama down 6 spots and 5 spots in the coaches poll, number 7 in both polls, however. Tennessee is number 8 and number 9 in the coaches poll. The Vols, they lose this week, of course, to Arkansas. Still not a huge drop for them, 8 and then 9, but we don't know. The way teams are losing right now, it's hard to really bury these teams after one loss. So there is room with this new playoff system to lose a game or 2, possibly 3. Ole Miss is number 9 and number 8, so basically the inverse, depending on the poll from Tennessee. They're 9 in the AP, 8 in the coaches. Ole Miss got back on track this week. They looked good. Number 10 and number 11 is Clemson. Clemson's up 5 spots and 3 spots in the coaches. Pulled out a nice win against a horrible Florida State team, but that team seems to be on track, though, after that tough loss week 1 to Georgia. Iowa State's number 11 and number 13, up 5 spots in the AP and 3 in the coaches poll. They're undefeated on the season. They're actually tied at 11 with Notre Dame in the AP, and Notre Dame's 12 in the coaches. Notre Dame's 4-0. They're up 3 spots and then 1 spot in the coaches. The LSU Tigers, we thought would move up this week, but the Bayou Bengals stay at number 13 in the AP poll on their bye week. A lot of teams ahead of them lost, so we thought the home team would move up. They did not in the AP. They did move up in the coaches to number 10, which is up 2 spots. They got a big game this week. We'll talk about that again in a few minutes. BYU number 14 and number 15 in both polls, up 3 spots and 4 spots. Texas A&M coming in at number 15 and number 14. Huge win this week over Missouri, up 10 spots and 7 spots respectively. Utah at number 16 in the AP and 17 in the coaches, up a couple spots and 1 spot in the coaches. Boise State number 17. They're up 4 spots, and they're number 22 in the coaches poll, ranked for the first time. Indiana Hoosiers, number 18, tied with Oklahoma. Actually a 3-way tie with Oklahoma and Kansas State in the AP poll, which is interesting. Their number, where are they in the coaches poll? Are they not in the coaches poll, which is weird as hell? No, they're number 20 in the coaches poll. Oklahoma, number 16 in the coaches poll. And Kansas State is 19. The 3 of them are 18, as I said, in the AP poll. Missouri drops down to 21, down 12 spots in the AP poll, and down 9 spots to 18 in the coaches poll. Pittsburgh Panthers, number 22, 5-0. That's my sleeper team. As Eli Holstein, the guy from Zachary High, who I covered a lot in high school, cover a lot of Zachary High School games over the years. I'm definitely rooting for this guy. He's been over 300 yards in all 5 games. They're 5-0 on the season. Number 24 in the coaches poll, 22 in the AP sleeper team. I'm rooting for Eli Holstein in Pittsburgh. Number 23 is Illinois, and they're number 23 in both polls. They're a good team. They had 1 loss to a really good team. They're worthy of that top 25 ranking so far, in my opinion. Michigan drops all the way down 14 spots to number 24 and 11 spots to number 21 in the coaches poll. Not all that impressed with Michigan. I mean, they're solid. Sharon Moore's doing the best he can, but that a lot of defection from last year, not the same team. SMU's number 25 in both polls. They picked up the big win this week, earning a top 25 spot. Vanderbilt's actually got 26 votes in the AP poll and 4 in the coaches poll, so they're getting up there. USC actually dropped out of the AP. Louisville dropped out, and UNLV dropped out of the AP poll. Dropping out. And the coaches poll was also those very same 3 teams. All right, folks, so now I want to get into the matchups for this up and coming week. There's some good ones. Week 7, here we go. Start off with Friday night football, number 16, a Utah versus Arizona State. Utah's a 6.5-point favorite there. Both teams 4-1 and 1-1 in conference play. I think that's going to be a good football game, people. I don't think that's going to be a blowout or a layup. Now we get to the Saturday game starting in the early mornings. South Carolina, they looked really poor this week at home against Ole Miss. They got to go visit Alabama. Alabama should be very angry after the Vanderbilt game there at home. I expect Alabama to smack South Carolina up. 21 points is a lot of points, but I expect Bama to win that game by at least 21. You got Clemson right here, number 10. They look good lately. They're cruising. Cade Klubnik's getting it together. They got a game right here, a 20-point favorite at Wake Forest. Wake Forest is only 2-3, 1-1 in the ACC. Early morning game. I think Wake Forest could probably keep it closer than 20 points, but I expect Dabo to come out victorious. Missouri going to Massachusetts, to UMass. They're a 27.5-point favorite. I didn't like at all the way Missouri looked. Felt like they quit for part of that game. I would not take them for 27.5 points against anyone the way they're playing. They should be really upset, however, so they should smack UMass around just off of Shirley being upset and Shirley being a much more talented team. Texas against Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. Now, this is a game to see right here at 2:30 p.m. on ABC, 2:30 Central, because I'm in the Central time zone. Most of you are in the Eastern time zone, so most of you it's 3:30. What a game. Quinn Ewers expected to be back for this game. Arch Manning played really well in his absence. I am picking an upset here. Texas is getting 14.5. I would take Oklahoma all day on the 14.5. I honestly think Texas is a lot better than Oklahoma. Hear me out. I think Texas is a lot better than Oklahoma, but I think Quinn Ewers gets back in there. He hadn't played in a few weeks, and this is the Red River rivalry. This game is going to be really close. I think Oklahoma's coming out here, and they're going to lay everything out here in this game. Everything. They know this is their only chance to get back in the playoff mix. They're going to lay everything out here. I think Oklahoma pulls off the upset. Penn State against USC. Penn State's number 4. It's their biggest test of the year. USC, Miller Moss, man, they looked bad lately, especially that last game. That's Minnesota. USC's unranked right now. So, yeah, that after starting off great with that LSU win, I think USC can bounce back and pull off the upset here against Penn State. I would definitely take the 5.5 points with USC. Think they can pull off the upset here. I can see it. Stanford against Notre Dame. Notre Dame coming in a 23.5-point favorite. That's a lot of points. I think they beat Stanford relatively easy. I don't know if I would take the 23.5 because I think Stanford can be a little more competitive than that. Cal, boy, after that, what they did against the Canes last week. Whew, I think Eli Holstein's going to pick these guys apart. Holstein's got over 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Man, I'm riding the Eli Holstein train. Like I said, I covered the guy a lot at Zachary High. He's doing well at Pittsburgh. He originally committed to Alabama and then decided to transfer out of Bama. He's in Pittsburgh. They're happy he's in Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh keeps this thing rolling. They're only a 3-point favorite. That would be one of my best bets of the week. I think they smack Cal by a couple touchdowns. Illinois is a 19.5-point favorite over Purdue. Purdue is pretty bad. Illinois, don't know their potential to blow a team out here, but I would take them if I had to bet on it. But, yeah, I think Illinois wins this game comfortably. Next, you got BYU, a 4.5-point favorite against Arizona. Arizona is 3-2. BYU is 5-0. BYU at home, I'd probably take the 4.5 points. Arizona's a pretty good team, but I like BYU by a touchdown or so. Georgia against Mississippi State. Mississippi State's the worst team in the SEC, and it's not even close. They got embarrassed by Toledo a couple weeks ago. I have no respect for them. I think Georgia smacks them around really good here. 34 points. I would probably take the whole 34 if I was betting on it and bet that they win this game by a good 40. Though I will say Mississippi State played fairly competitive against Arch Manning in Texas on the road. I don't like them in this game. Georgia's had a little time to stew over the Alabama loss. Tennessee against the Gators, 16 points. I might would lean Gators in this game because they've played better. 16 points is a lot, but I think Tennessee is going to win this game relatively easy. I think 14 points, 13 points, something like that. Ohio State and Oregon. Now, this is a huge game. Prime time on NBC. Number 2 hadn't really been tested. Ohio State. Number 3, Oregon hadn't really been tested. They're going to test each other. This game's in Autzen Stadium. We know how it gets in that stadium. If you're a Duck, man, those Ducks get loud. They get loud and proud. They're number 3. Ohio State's number 2. Ohio State's a 3-point favorite. I would roll with the home team here. This is a coin flip game. College game day is going to be there. It's going to be a great football game, people, a great last possession type football game. But I would roll with the home team, Oregon, even though Oregon's had some hiccups this year. Even though they won, they've had some hiccups in terms of the way they played. Their best test was Boise State, who's ranked. Boise State gave them all they can handle. I would lean towards the home team, but I feel like I don't have enough data on Ohio State to really know how good they are. Next primetime game right here in Baton Rouge. LSU, a 3.5-point underdog at Tiger Stadium at night against Ole Miss. Boy, Ole Miss defense looked good last week. Their defense looked really good. LSU's defense has not really looked good all year. Their defense looked its best in its last game before the bye week against South Alabama. I like the way the defense looked. I know it's South Alabama, but I did like the way LSU's defense looked for the first time, only giving up 10 points to a team that's actually scored a lot. This game was crazy. Last year, if you remember it, was an Ole Miss. Ole Miss won this game and scored like 55-52. And I think it was somewhere in that range. Jaden Daniels lit it up. LSU offense was amazing, and it still wasn't good enough to beat Jackson Dart and the Rebels. Dart has 2,100 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions on the season. So, yeah, they've been doing some good things over there, but LSU's offense has also been nothing to sneeze at on the year. I'm going to go into this a little bit. I could look at some offensive numbers for the Tigers. This should be a good football game. Garrett Nussmeier, 1,652 yards. So he's putting up some good numbers. He's got 15 touchdowns on the season for the Tigers. 4 interceptions to go along with that. Kyron Lacey really hadn't lit it up as much as I thought. He's only got 25 catches, 352. I thought he'd by far be the number 1 guy for LSU. He does have the most touchdowns at 5, but Aaron Anderson is a guy who I didn't have on my radar. He's got more receptions and more yards than Kyron Lacey. Did not see that coming. He's got 2 touchdowns. Mason Taylor, the son of Jason Taylor, has got 28 catches, 280, and 8 touchdowns. So interesting stuff there as far as the matchup. I expect a lot of offense here. Going back to it, the point spread, I believe, was 2.5, if I'm not mistaken. We'll get back here. 2.5, I think it was. 3.5. I would actually take LSU. It's on the wrong side of 3. I would take LSU. I think Ole Miss can win this game, but 3.5. I think this is a 2 or 3 point game either way. So if you're giving me LSU on the right side of the 3, I would take LSU. But I think Ole Miss certainly can win this game by 2 or 3 points. Iowa State, 3-point favorite on the road against West Virginia. The Mountaineers 2-0 in the conference, only 3-2 on the season. Iowa State, if they want to prove that they are a legit playoff contender, they need to keep rolling and win this game. They're a 3-point favorite here. They hadn't really been tested. Probably their best wins against Iowa. So we'll see if they can get the dub here and keep it going. Kansas State's a number 18, 3.5 point favorite on the road against Coach Prime. And Coach Prime's already got 4 wins. They only won 4 last year the whole season. Give me Kansas State on the road here. Coach Prime, they've been surviving games the last couple of weeks, games that maybe we thought they would lose. So give them props for that. Travis Hunter, Shador, they're great players. But I like Kansas State on the road here. I think they're just a better team. Boise State at home on the road, away from the Smurf turf and going to Hawaii. Long trip for anyone. Boise State's a 20.5 point favorite. That's a lot of points going against a 2-3 team that's 0-1 in conference. I like Boise State in the game. I'd probably not take the 20 points, however. All right, folks. So got some really good matchups this week. So make sure you all are checking out all of those great matchups this week. Can't wait for it. Can't wait to preview it. I'll have a video coming out in the next day or so about this past week in the NFL. I'm also going to talk some baseball playoffs because it's getting really interesting on that front as well. So everyone out there, remember, as always, peace and sports. I'll see y'all later.